This is Apollo. If you were familiar with Blender and you haven't used it in 6 or 9 months and you need a refresher course, you've come to the right place. Let's start with a quick cheat sheet of some of the things you can do with the trackpad and the keyboard. I'm on a MacBook, so a lot of this tutorial is geared towards that. All right, let's start with Blender. First things first, you go to your user preferences and you go into your input. Make sure that you have emulates 3-button mouse enabled, emulate pad checked off, and also natural trackpad direction checked off. So back to the model. Let's start with a couple of things here. Let me move this over away from this screen, and that will keep us focused on the model here. All right, so first things first, viewing the model from various angles. The 1 key lets you view your model from the front, Control 1, view the model from the back, 3, view the model from the side, Control 3, views the model from the left. Let me actually, okay, good. Hey, it doesn't, my screencast is not working correctly with the control key, so that's okay. So 1, 3, 7 views the model from the front, views the model from the top. Control 7 views the model from the bottom. Let me view this from the front again. So one important thing to note here is perspective view versus orthogonal view. Perspective view gives you these angle grids when you're viewing it from a different angle, and you can notice it in that floor. Orthogonal view lets you view things straight on without any type of indicator that it's going towards some vanishing point. All right. Next thing is controlling the view of the mouse. So on a MacBook, you would use 2 fingers to sort of rotate up your view, rotate down your view, sort of rotate to the right, rotate to the left. You can also zoom in, use Control, and you drag down with 2 fingers, or push up with 2 fingers to zoom out, zoom in, 2 fingers down, zoom out, 2 fingers up. All right, let's talk about object selection, but before we do that, I'll have to create a couple of objects. So I use Shift D to duplicate this cube, another Shift D to duplicate it. All right, so to select an object, use 2 fingers or right click. So you can select one individually like this. Or you can select multiple ones, use the Shift right click. You can deselect everything or toggle selection using the A key, like that. You can also use this thing called the box select, hit the B key, and I do a 3-finger drag, and I think just do a 3-finger drag and it creates a rectangle. Whatever falls within that rectangle gets selected like that. And you can use the A key to deselect or select everything, toggles the selection. You can also use the circle key by hitting C or circle select, and you can use 2-finger drag up to sort of increase the radius of that circle, or 2-finger drag down to reduce it, just to target your selection a little bit better. So for this one, let's make it really big. So I can select these 2, and I can click multiple times to select multiple objects. All right, and you can hit escape or enter at this point. I'll hit enter to complete my selection. All right, let's do some basic transformations. I'll deselect everything. Let me select this cube. All right, first things first, let's do G to grab, and this grabs your model, and you can move it up and down to whatever location. It's sort of hard to tell where it's going to end up. It could be underneath that origin plane or on top, drag it to the left or right. You can constrain the motion of your cube to a particular axis if you hit the x, one of the key that corresponds to your axis, like x. This will constrain your object to move along the x-axis. Even do y, and it constrains it to the y-axis, or z to constrain it to the z-axis. And you can hit escape to cancel your changes, or enter to accept it. So I'll hit escape for this time. You can also tell it to move when you're grabbing something. You can hit the G key and tell it to move along a particular axis by a certain number of units. So I'll hit G, X, move it to 3 units to the right. I think if I hit negative, it'll move it 3 units to the left from where you first hit the G key. All right. Next will be scale. Scale just sizes things proportionally. So if you hit the S key, that's a scale, and you can move it out to scale it up. Move your mouse in towards the center of the object to scale it down. And again, you don't really have any, this is just all look, or by look to see how much you've scaled it. You can also constrain the scaling along a particular axis. So if you hit X, it'll scale it along the X. If you hit the Y key, it'll scale it along the Y axis. The Z key scales it along the Z axis. If you wanted to scale and ignore a particular axis, you can hit the scale key S and then shift the axis that you want to ignore. So if I wanted to ignore the Z axis and just wanted to scale it along the X and the Y, I would hit S, shift Z, and it would scale along the X and the Y, but not the Z. All right. You can also constrain the scaling to a particular axis. Again, you would hit the S key, the axis you wanted to scale along, and then a number that tells it the number of times to multiply the scale along a particular axis. So if I do SX2, it'll scale the object to 2 times the length along a particular axis. I hit escape there. Again, you can do it along the Z axis as well. SZ 0.5, and that really scales it down to half of what it was before. All right, so we've got scaling. We've also got rotate. If you hit the R key, move my mouse here, R key, and just rotate, move your mouse around, it'll rotate it. Again, this is just by eye to see what's going on with it. You can probably view it from the front. When you hit the scale, it'll probably just do it along, not scale, let's try viewing from the front and rotate, and this will just rotate it along whatever orthogonal to the screen axis, which at this point I believe is the is the Z axis. No, I'm sorry, the Y axis. Yellow is the Y axis. All right, and I think when even if you're at an angle here, this rotates it again along the axis that's sort of pointing away from the screen orthogonally. So if you do rotate again, it's hard to tell what it's doing. And again, this is where if you want to be specific about your rotation, you can constrain it to a particular axis as well. So you can do R, do it along the X axis, and you can use your mouse, and when it does a rotation, it does it along the X axis. You can do R along the Z axis or around the Z axis, and you can rotate your, make your mouse go around and around to sort of rotate it. But that still doesn't give us a fine control over things. So what you can do is do rotation, specify an axis, let's say along the or around the z, and give it the number of degrees you want it to turn. Let's say 45, and that does it for you. So that's a little bit better than just trying to sort of eyeball things and using your mouse. All right, let's do um, just some basic windows. This is your tool panel here. You can do all these transformations. You can set things as smooth or flat. There's also this create if you wanted to add a new mesh. There's other things here too that's useful. There's some animation stuff, physics. All right, so let's go to the properties window. You hit the, actually for the tools, you can, tools area, you can hit T to toggle to make them visible or not visible. You can also use the N key to display properties about the object that you've selected. So for example, you've selected this cube, and you can change like the XYZ location of its origin. So let's say I want it at the X is at 3, Y is at 0, Z is at 0. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a 3D cursor. Let's actually try its properties here. So 3. All right, moves the object center point to the 3, 1, 2, 3 X. Y, if you look at it, its center point is at 0. Same thing with Z. This is Y, this is Z, and that's at 0. All right. Adding new objects is important. We sort of did that already. Here's a quick tip. These axes, if you use the left drag, or I use 3 fingers to drag stuff over, you can move it along a particular axis, like that. All right. Let's do adding new objects. So to add a new object, again, you can go to this tab, and you can do a cube or some other type of mesh, or a shortcut key for it would be Shift A, and you can select from a variety of things here: camera, lamp, mesh. Typically you'll use a mesh cube, cylinder, probably an icosphere or UV sphere, probably UV sphere. All right, you can also duplicate things. And if you hit Shift D, it will duplicate that particular object that you selected. Alt D does it as well. It's a little bit different behavior. The meshes are shared between the 2 objects, so any changes you make to one mesh, it will impact 2 objects that are sharing that mesh. All right. Editing mode. All right. So right now we're in this object mode, which is just selecting, viewing things as objects as a whole. You can also edit the individual meshes. So let me go here and just do a bunch of undos so I can focus on one object. All right, we're back to our original cube, and let me go back to perspective view a little bit. Might make it look more interesting. So you hit the tab key to go into edit mode, and a mesh is made out of several things here: a vertex, an edge, and a face. Those are the 3 sort of things that you can deal with when you're in edit mode. You can change selection. Right now you're selecting a vertex at a time, and again you can use your Shift key to do that selection, and you can also toggle your selection of none or all. You can use the box select to select the vertices like this. You can also use your circle select, and again you can increase or decrease the size of the radius doing that, and hit escape if you don't want to complete that selection. Let's see what else is there. And you can use Shift right click to select multiple things. All right, What else is there? Right click. To switch from vertex, edge, and face select, you just can click on one of these icons down here. You can hit Control Tab and do and select V, E, F for vertex, edge, and face respectively. Let's do some basic stuff here. Let's go into face select mode and right click on a face. A few things you can do, again, you can do similar things like G for grab, and this will just move it along the plane that you're in. You can also, again, use the axis specific or constrain your movement to X, Y, or Z. You can also scale a face or an edge. So if you hit S, you can scale it out or in. Hit escape there. You can also constrain it to a particular axis. This one is, let's constrain it to the Z axis, so S, Z, and it'll scale it to the to the Z axis. Again, you move your mouse up and down, or you can do scale 2 to make it scale out 2 times, or scale S2, S or Z2 to make it scale 2 times along the Z axis. You can also do rotation, hit R, and you can do all that fancy stuff there. All right, so we did scale, rotation, and grab, and you can do the same thing that you can in object edit mode. All right, so next thing is extrude and inset, loop cuts, or loop cut and slide cuts, and toggling to the wireframe. All right, first thing, extrude. So extrude just takes a particular edge, a vertex or a face, makes a copy of it, fills in the geometry around it, and lets you manipulate that particular new face, edge, or vertex. So I'm in face select mode. I've selected a face. When I do extrude, it will let you sort of drag your mouse out, and notice everything is filled in with lines and faces. You can take that new face, edge, or vertex and start, doing what you can normally do with it. At inset, so you can see, like, I start out with a cube and I can start creating complex stuff here. If I just drag this face, it has that effect. I don't necessarily want that. Command Z to undo it. So I can, again, extrude that part of it and sort of start creating, some structure. Maybe I want to create, a fancy set of steps. Extrude, hit the E button there. And I can take a face again and rotate it like this. And if I want to constrain it to this axis, hit RX. Start doing that, and take that and extrude it, and then you can start creating some fancy structures here. All right, another thing that you can do, let me undo all this. No, okay. Is inset. Instead of creating a face, it allows you to sort of create a face within a face, or an edge within an edge maybe. And you hit the I button, and you just push in to make it smaller with your mouse, or pull it out to get it closer to the starting point. But let's push in, and that creates an inset face. And again, you can move this G, S, Y to move it along the Y-axis. Let's see. No, this is the Y-axis. So G, Y, there we go. Must have hit another button. So again, you can start creating some stuff like this. What's the difference between that and the extrude? Let's see. If I extrude, does that, and it really makes it a little bit shorter process. If I scale, it'll create that, but it sort of bulges it out. It's the same effect. And I can probably push it in and get the same result that I had with this. So inside is just a quicker way to do the extrude and make it smaller. It just creates creates an interface without you having to do these extra steps. All right, let's see. Let's talk about the loop, cut, and slide. Undo all this. All right, so loop, cut, and slide. If you hit Control R, Blender will find a loop around the object. It could be horizontal, vertical, whatever's appropriate. Let's do this horizontal one. And you click on the button to indicate where you want the loop to be. And then you can move your mouse with a single finger, with one finger up and down to sort of finalize where you want that cut to complete. So now it created a few faces for you, and you can take this and scale it and do some fancy stuff with it. Probably do the process over again. You can hit enter instead of clicking, and I can scale this in. So I can do, create some figures that are interesting out of that. So let me undo this. The other thing you can do is when you do Control R, you can hit a number. Let's say you wanted 4 loops there, and again you hit enter to indicate that you like those loops, and then you can move your mouse to sort of complete the exact location you want those loops to be. Again, you can scale, and then you can you've got your edges and faces that have been newly created. You can also do, if you want something a little bit different than just a perfect face and rectangles, you can do K to cut, and this just creates points or vertex in the geometry itself. So I created additional vertices here. You can hit enter to complete. And do K again. Boom, boom, boom. I think you can do escape to cancel what you try to do. Let's do some interesting stuff here. You can do, let's do some edges or some loop cuts. Then the reason I want to do this is just to demonstrate some additional selection stuff. If you hit Alt and right click, or Alt 2 fingers and 2-finger tap, let's go to, what this will do is it'll select sort of continuous edges for you. You can go into face mode as well, and you can do Alt 2-finger tap or right click. It'll again select continuous faces for you. Let's see what happens if you do edge select again. This one will sort of select a ring of parallel edges. So if you hit Alt, right click, Control Alt, right click, it'll select all those parallel edges. Some additional selection. Let's go into vertex mode, Control V. If you select one here and you do Control plus, it'll select like additional vertex around your initial selection. Hitting Control plus and it'll just go out. If you go Control minus, I think it might have lost itself there. Let's start again. Here, Control plus, Control minus, so it goes back towards your original selection. Another thing you can do, go into face mode, Control Tab F, and right click. What you can do is, if you can hide your selection, hit H, or you can unhide everything, Alt H. You can also hide things that aren't selected, hit Shift H, and then again Alt H to display everything again. A to toggle the selection. I think that's a good enough set of basic things you can do in Blender, and hopefully this will help jog those memories of what you used to know. All right, thank you everybody.